No, we can't eat that.
We get to eat.
No, we don't get to eat.
Actually,
No.
the cookies are fair game.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Whole grain, 1 ounce.
That's cute.
Hey, I highlighted
ready?
snacks.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our work session on the Food Services Program. I'm Donna Savigny, President of the Board of Education, and we're excited to have a few folks here with us today to go over this information. And with that, I'll just pass it over to Dr. Lockhart.
Thank you, President Savigny. Good afternoon, everybody. We're excited to be here today to talk about our food service program. I know board members had some questions as it related to health and nutrition and some other things. So what we thought we'd do was in just a second here, I'll ask folks to introduce themselves. We have a brief overview of the food services program, but I know at the heart of the matter is questions and information that the board wanted to get at. And so as we've done previously, we solicited some of those questions ahead of time, so we'll have those there and certainly open the conversation for discussion at the board's pleasure. So with that, Karen Sarno, who's our Supervisor of Food Services. Karen, if you'd introduce Tammy. And then, of course, we have Chris Hartlove, John O'Neill, and Cindy McCabe at the table as well. And then, Karen, without any other questions or comments from the board, you can go ahead and begin.
Okay, great. I'm Karen Sarno, Supervisor of Food Services for Carroll County Public Schools, and with me is Tammy Swam, who is Assistant Supervisor and also holds a registered dietitian credentials. And so, any other questions, or should I get started in the presentation? Okay. So for our work session today, we wanted to kind of give an overview of some of the criteria and of the food service program. When you think of the food service program, the biggest thing you think about is school lunch, and school lunch is kind of we'll say the center of the plate, or it is the bulk of our services that we provide. In addition, we also offer the school breakfast program in all schools where children can receive breakfast. And that also includes career and tech if they don't get a chance to have it at their first school. We then also operate the after-school snack program and the CACFP, which is Child and Adult Care Food Program, Supper Program, which we offer in income-eligible schools such as Robert Moton and Tawnytown Elementary. These programs have to operate after the school day, and they're free to all students. And we're also partnering with the Boys and Girls Club to offer those in Northwest and also in North Carroll Middle School. And then our big kind of other program growth area, I would say, is the summer food service program. And this is where we're trying to bring meals to particularly our disadvantaged children, the children that may be eligible for free and reduced meals in those pockets. And we can serve those kids in the summer when we know they normally would get meals from us during the school year. So those are really the programs and federal programs that we operate. Kind of give a background, kind of fiscally, of the program and some of the challenges that we faced and how we've been moving forward. We had quite a run of deficit years. And when we have a deficit year, we're coming to the general fund for additional funding for our programming. Our goal is to try to be self-sufficient and reinvest into the program and not require that funding from the school system, being able to utilize the funding that we get through running those federal programs and through the income we receive from parents who elect to have their children purchase meals or items. So if you look, you can see we kind of had a turnaround period around 2015, and a lot of that had to do with some operational things that we put in place.
And Ms. Sarno, I just want to say, if you're on that prior slide, I'm glad that this is one of your earlier slides in the presentation, because I want to openly recognize the outstanding work that you've done over the last couple of years. I mean, this really shows how we're struggling in food services for quite a number of years and how you've really turned this around from being in the red to being in the black and in a really strong position. So I want to openly recognize the fantastic work that you've done.
I thank you for the recognition, but I think it really is a complete team approach, and I do have a slide talking about the food service employees and how they've really supported the programming that we as a central team put together, and some of the things that weren't easy to do to really to get us to that point. Back one, thank you. So talking about really the changing dynamic that kind of made some of those things happen, really happened during the period of 2012-2015. And in 2012, there was a food service program review committee that was made up of school-based administrators, folks from central office. I believe we had parents, we had cafeteria managers on that committee. And we said, how are we going to turn this around? And they came up with 7 recommendations. And those recommendations essentially consisted of we needed to increase our meals price because we had to have a price point that would allow us to achieve that break even. Point of sale implementation. We went kind of from a paper pencil roster system to a full implementation of technology. Labor savings we had to look at. We were a little labor heavy for the meals that we were serving. We had to look at marketing and pulling a centralized menu. We had a very decentralized system. We had 43 different menus running, and so we had challenges with food cost and consistency of product that we really wanted to focus on. Marketing continues to be a challenge and a project. We have a lot of stigmas in school meals, and it's often the brunt of a lot of kind of comedic jokes and terms. But when you see sometimes what's being offered, the quality and the food point, but marketing's an area that we really continue to try to reach out. The other thing was to establish a PAR plan. That was a planned asset replacement plan where we were looking at aging equipment. And again, we didn't want to be going to the general fund saying, oh, the walk-in freezer at Westminster High, okay, there's a $100,000 investment. We need to replace that. We had to find a way to fund that ourselves. We looked at satelliting pilot. Can we produce all our meals in every single kitchen, or can we look at a model where we had shared management responsibilities for one manager between multiple schools? And the other thing we had to look at was an application of good business practices. There was a lot of discussion of whether we should privatize food services at that time. I was a strong believer that we could do it ourselves, and we wanted to keep our employees as our employees and partner with them in achieving those goals. The other big thing that happened during this era were some of the biggest changes in school meal regulations. Major changes in what constituted a meal and what snacks were allowed to be sold in a school cafeteria. So because of that, we had a lot of changes in our menu, which again required us to become far more centralized. I want to give a whole slide to technology as a tool, because changing from a paper pencil food service program to an automated one, and I have to, I am indebted also to tech services for their support during this whole journey. But talk about that. Tammy's going to drive for me. So the first thing we did was we had to do nutrient analysis software and pull those centralized menus in. This had to do with the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act and having to demonstrate that we met all nutrient requirements that ensured our funding that we continued to get. That was the first step we did. The next thing we did was we automated with the point of sale, putting in the computerized cash register system where every child gets an account, has access to that account. Parents have access to that account. They can deposit money in multiple ways. We are no longer being a cash system where it's cash on the line. This also made overt identification of knowing who had meal benefits versus who did not. That became hidden, and that was an important factor. Next, we went to online payment. We did My School Bucks, where parents could pay by credit card or by online check. They also got access to view activity on that child's account with the online system. Next, we pulled free and reduced meal application processing centrally. Prior to that, every school processed the applications that they received locally, and then we just kind of coordinated that data. We pulled that centrally and feel we have a better, better control, better consistency and accuracy in our ensuring that those families that are eligible for meal benefits receive them, and hopefully took some workload off the school secretaries.
And let me just say that certainly, I'm sure, was quite major because, again, having processed some of those applications over the years, you know, you get a stack in, and I mean, it was quite time-consuming, and certainly you had to, you know, be careful with all the calculations and all. So hearing that it's done centralized with the software, I'm sure is a very big thing.
And there's a ripple effect with that too, because those free and reduced students also go towards state funding formulas. So it's really important that we identify everybody who is eligible. Yes.
Excuse me, I have a question also. On your online payment, let's say Johnny gets in line and his parents have an account and they pay into it, and Johnny gets in line today and gets his lunch and says, oh, honey, you don't have enough money in your account. What do you do?
So we allow students to charge up to $10 or 2 days worth. It's often 3 days, like or more if they don't get breakfast. But we allow them to charge a meal, and within 24 hours, any child that borrows money, that parent that would be in our student database receives a email alert letting them know that that they borrowed money and the repayment needs to occur.
I just didn't want somebody to go in line and not be able to have lunch then because of that.
Do they still offer them something to eat? Because we definitely don't want to hear, you know, of instances, and we hear things online all the time from other states and other counties of this kid wasn't permitted to eat because there wasn't enough money on their account.
First $10 in charges is the complete meal, identical everything.
Okay.
Then if they, at that point, they continue to charge, we have a complimentary meal, which is just the entire meal, but the substitution of a sandwich versus the, I'd say, any entree of the 4 or 5 that might be offered in that day. So it's an extremely minor deterrent, and it's only after that child has been fed completely everything that they would want those first 2 to 3 days.
Okay. Because I think, and I also wanted to say too, I have never heard of any incident in Carroll County where a child was told no, they could not eat. So that's one thing I'm very thankful for in this county, is we are very aware that there are children who do not have enough money to eat lunch or breakfast at schools, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. I agree. I know a lot of times too, speaking from a principal perspective, and Cindy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, even if kids are getting beyond those couple of days or $10, principals will find a way to make sure that they continue to fund until they can, you know, have the child pay back or the parents pay back.
Yeah, I just don't want a child to be embarrassed, and that's just as bad of a day, and it just sets up for failure the rest of the day then when a child is embarrassed that, you know, that I get a different lunch because of something that has happened at home or whatever, and I just want to make sure that everybody's being taken care of. Thank you.
The next step we went kind of in our journey of technology was we wanted to get back to customer service and to trying to kind of work with our image and give our customers what they want. So we did a system-wide electronic student survey. That's on my to-do list to revisit. I'd like to see how we stand compared to some of that baseline data. Certainly we've been doing other survey techniques, but this one was unique because it was a systemic one. But next, we did an updated inventory system of our food and supplies within the kitchens that tie into our food costs so that we could better track that and make sure we're having consistency and that we didn't have any problems in given locations or sites. Then last year, in 18-19, over the summer, we put in place online meal benefit applications, which allow a parent to go to myschoolapps.com, select Carroll County Public Schools, and go ahead within, I think it takes maybe 3 minutes to put in a meal benefit form. Comes directly to our office. We process it within that business day that we receive it. So that has worked well in the turnaround time for meal benefits for families. And our latest journey to technology is with our digital menus. And slide.
I want to say I do love the new app, NutraSlice.
Okay.
I do love that. It's nice when the kids are on the bus and they're getting ready and they're like, what's for lunch today? And I'm like, oh, there you go. Like, it's nice to have that availability.
Yay, someone's using the app.
Yeah, yeah. And I've been promoting it too. I've been telling people, it's on it, there's an app for it.
So with the digital menus, this is where we as a department tried to tie into to the greater school system's goals and objectives. So we tied in to support pillar number 2, strengthen productive family and community partnerships. Communication between Carroll County Public Schools and community demonstrates transparency, trust, and respect. And the goal being to improve the community access to information and making it easier to find and understand. So in our land, that meant provide more accessible and transparent nutritional and allergy information on the products served in the cafeterias. I put it as full disclosure. And you'll see on my chart, this was really this year's goal. Much thanks to Tammy to getting it implemented over the summer. And now through this year, we're adding more photographs that are actually our food out there and getting more of the detail filled in. So it is kind of a year-long project till we get it the way we like.
And I'm going to state the obvious, but I just want to stop for 1 second and say this is a great example of the work that we did all year last year with all of our departments in making sure everybody was knowledgeable and really understood our strategic plan, goals, and objectives, and how does that translate to the work that we do. And there's a great example right there. So sorry to be Captain Obvious, but thank you for demonstrating that.
I appreciate you being Captain Obvious, because I wanted to say similar things. Like I love to see the tie to the strategic plan and how this is part of the goal of the entire school system. And it's wonderful to see that every area of the school system is owning that and trying to understand where everything fits in the big picture. So I appreciate that as well.
So we do have a little brief, if you want to talk. And I don't know with time allows, but we do have the, I think, link for those that haven't taken advantage.
So when a parent logs on, they can select the school that their child attends. We'll just choose elementary. We can choose, we have breakfast menus and lunch menus loaded. And as Ms. Battaglia said, there's also an app, so we encourage families to use the app. It's actually pretty user-friendly to navigate and to find out what's on the lunch menu for that day. But we'll just take a look at today, for example. In Eldersburg Elementary today, they had chicken patty on a roll. Parents have the option to hover or click on it. You get a picture, as I said. We're starting to incorporate more of our own pictures. We do use a few stock photos as well. Ingredients are listed, so the parents have the option to see what is actually in the food, as well as nutrient information and allergen information, which is not on this. That's okay. And the grilled cheese was also on the menu today.
I thought it was funny. Today was the proverbial
Grilled cheese on a rainy day.
Grilled cheese and tomato soup.
Also, for those parents that have students with allergies, they can filter the menu. Why isn't it showing? Oh, I don't have it selected here, but they can filter the menu for food allergies, and it can show what their child can actually have that day or what they cannot have.
Okay, and I saw a question, how
Sure.
would you rate this food? So
Yes,
they have
it allows users to actually rate their favorite food. We've had 3 people rate food so far. They can say what they like about it. They can provide comments, and it instantly comes to our dashboard on our administration side. So we can actually see what foods are liked by students in which area of the county, because we find drastic differences between
I
the
haven't
county.
rated any food.
So that is just a little...
Hopefully data pool that we'll build and can use.
Exactly, is another outreach method. We're also able, fortunately, to do some marketing on the side, so we encourage families with My School apps and My School Box, make it easier as a one-stop shop to find all of our technology and things.
I think this app would be really cool to have middle schoolers and high schoolers particularly that are taking health classes to download, and then when they have lunch, they could go in and rate the food too, and that'd be a good way to kind of incorporate it with the health classes.
Great idea.
And we are promoting to nurses too for carbohydrate counts. They're actually available there for them instantly, as it's updated pretty regularly. So.
Get back to the
So we've actually taken photos. Any food photos you see in this presentation are ones that we've taken online in schools or of entrees and items served. We also brought along with us a little bit of just some of the entrees that were available literally, I think, yesterday and today, so that you could see, you know, if you're visiting schools, please come to the cafeteria, walk down the cafeteria lines, but we also want to see an idea of some of the choice and variety that is available that we have in the meals served and the snacks. I'll talk about snacks too later in the presentation. School lunch, like I said, that is really where we have most of our service or business to the students. School lunch changed significantly with the change in the regulations. One of the biggest things was defining a meal. And the important thing was students had to elect to take a fruit or vegetable for it to count as a meal after the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. In the past, so that there wouldn't be great tray waste or food waste, they would say a meal has to be 5 components. It has to be a milk, a fruit, a vegetable, and a grain and a protein. What we really kind of bundled together as the entree. And if they were to take at least 3 out of 5 of those, you can get reimbursement, and when we talk about funding, you can get funded for this meal. When they put in the new requirements, they said, no, we want this to be a more nutrient-dense meal. A fruit or vegetable must be taken. Philosophically, and one of the reasons I shared this slide, was we made the decision that when that occurred, we were going to try the carrot. And I always believe in using the carrot and not the stick. How can we get children to elect to take a fruit or vegetable so that I'm not having my cashier at the end of the line saying you have to take a fruit or a vegetable? We wanted the kids to take that, and we said we are going to offer a vast variety of fruits and vegetables, hot, cold, fresh, canned, frozen, however that we can make them look appealing, make a variety, put it on the line so that a child will be electively taking those items. So that was a big change that we made. We knew we were incurring more food costs doing that, but we felt that it tied in with our mission and what we should do. And I think that was a picture there from Mount Airy Middle School that did a real nice job that day on their cold well, making those look good.
So is that offered right after the milk, or? Am I not looking at that right?
Generally, our milk comes first,
Mhm.
our entree, and then our
So it's
fruits
at
and
the end.
vegetables, and then down to the cashier.
Okay.
But that essentially was our view. One of the things we do is we also say that students can take one of every fruit or vegetable offered, or essentially unlimited fruits or vegetables. So we will have kids coming down the line with 3 or 4 different fruits and vegetables. We say one of every offered because if we have like fresh strawberries or we get in local produce and have watermelon, we want to make sure every kid gets an opportunity to get some. But anything offered, they can take one of, and many will take advantage of that, and that's one of our goals.
I have a question. We used to have dishes and you used to wash them and all that, and you got rid of the dishwasher. And now I see we are using styrofoam.
So we were a ware-washing system, and one of the tough decisions when we looked at our money and our trying to attempt to break even was that we had some that were going to have to make decisions on replace or repair. And so I did a cost analysis which included labor, which included the cost of the chemicals, and the cost of replacement and continuing to run the dish machine. At that point, we went to disposables, which was similar to business practice that we found across different school districts. We went to styrofoam. Styrofoam was legislated to no longer be used in food service operations in Maryland as of July 1, 2020. We started the transition and kind of shopping and trying some different products out. This school year, we'll have no problem getting into compliance. The one you see here that we're going to be using in the elementary schools is the compartment tray that is a compostable product. So that's what's replacing in the elementary schools.
I was wondering where you were going with that, because I thought, oh, we have a new law coming in and again, so I was just wondering what you were going to do with that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, you're on it. Thank you.
I will say I did get to use one of those today, and it was really sturdy, where I've seen a lot of kids when they're carrying it, the styrofoam would snap in half, but this was really sturdy, so it was easier actually for them to carry as they went to their table.
We trialed these at Elmer Wolf, I think, on Earth Day week or day last year, and we had a couple different varieties, and this was the one that the kids seemed to pick as their first choice. So.
You said that these are compostable, so how will we be handling that? Because I know with the styrofoam, it's like they were recyclable, but it was an extra effort to have parents or teachers volunteer to deal with the recycling of that, like it didn't happen.
So the styrofoam has been eliminated, but there is not a market or a compostable area at the landfill. So these will pretty much be just buried. I mean, that's the reality of the flow of the refuse in Carroll County. And it was one of my feedback, even when they were looking at the legislation, that, you know, because the other end isn't there for recyclable food service product or even compostable food service product, pretty much whatever we use will end up buried. And I guess the comment, and even some of the students said, well, it has an opportunity at some point to decompose.
Mr. Weaver, is that something that we should be working with the county on? Because then that's an awful lot of waste that we could eliminate.
Composting is a topic that is brought up quite a bit. Right now, our recycle market is upside down with everything, and we're working to get that reduced, what it costs us to get rid of recycling at the present time, get it down. And, you know, we do have composting for yard waste and things like that, free of charge to people, and hopefully we can one of the focuses we have is composting of food waste and things like that. How hard would it be to separate these items at the school level?
Oh, to separate the trays from the rest of the trash would not be problematic. That would not.
And pick up and things like that would be, you know, the transportation cost, I guess, as much as anything at the present time. But it's on our radar, and we are working on that as far as composting waste. And really, all restaurants, just not the school system. That's one. Commercial waste really doesn't get touched. We looked at, you know, residential waste more than anything as far as recycling and those type things. Commercial waste does not get a lot of visibility at the present time, and that's one area we have to start moving toward.
And I can only speak that in the kitchen or cafeteria setting, it wouldn't be difficult to separate. In terms of it being, you know, transported, that would have to go through the.
And you have a lot of green schools that already do that. I believe, I don't know how many you have in the county that really do that, but a lot of them are on site handling that at the present time.
So I was going to ask, is there a way to incorporate that into some type of STEM program? Like a lot of the schools where they're learning about composting and reusing, is there ways to look into doing that in all the schools whether it's a club, whether it's through their science classes?
And I think it was the green schools, for those schools who were involved in that. They had committees, and, yeah, they were looking at ways to make the cafeteria a little more efficient with the items that could be recycled or compostable.
So, Ms. Arno, I know that you had said, you know, how do we get the kids to choose the healthier choices, right? So they're out there, you have the fruits and the vegetables available as an unlimited option, but how do you actually get the kids to choose it, right? Because a lot of it's going to be about appearance and taste, right? So, I mean, because I know that these look quite good. I know I've been to, do you have any issues with consistency at some of the schools as well?
You know.
Because I've been through the lunch line with my kids enough times to say, oh, they don't usually look as appetizing as that, so.
No, consistency is always, you know, with our 40 locations, that's where our work becomes with site visitation, and when we do site visitation, you know, looking for that and saying, you know, the minimum on the menu is this, we're looking for you to exceed this, and using some smarter lunchroom techniques where the placement of the product and offering a variety. But that's continual work, but the goal and the objective is that all should look similar to this.
Okay, okay. And do we tend to, like, boil the vegetables, or do we try to steam them?
We steam. We don't
Steam.
we don't boil. We generally bake and steam product. Our two cooking techniques. We do get food, like I said, vegetables will come fresh. We are trying to secure more frozen vegetables. It's part of my planned asset replacement plan is that we need more refrigeration storage, and possibly looking into the possibility of can we have a centralized freezer or refrigeration here in Carroll County that we don't have. We also get some canned. My goal is eat a fruit or vegetable, you know, we try to make it available in all different forms. Some students going through, you know, braces or tooth loss or whatever, they sometimes can appreciate different, and we really work with our elementary schools that they're cutting up oranges and apples if they need to be cut up versus the whole fruit, but we'll also make the whole fruit available.
Once they made that required, did you see more waste, or are the kids getting into it pretty well?
With what we were avoiding was the waste. I mean, we could have probably a work session on, you know, food waste all in of itself, but we are finding that in some cases, those kids that take 2 or 3 or 4, I've heard elementaries, are you going to eat all that? Because it's almost the opposite problem. It looks so appealing that sometimes we will have kids fill up that whole tray. We try to have them take what they will eat. I don't see any increase in terms of our food loss, because I think it's pretty much explained to the kids, and it's encouraged but not forced upon them.
Well, you said you have trouble with, like, the marketing efforts, so is there a lot of work in that direction of, okay, how do you those healthy choices are out there, but if the kids aren't picking them, or they're taking them just because they're required to, but not actually eating them?
Well, I mean, that's a continual effort in terms of, like I said, placement on the line, good positive customer service from our cafeteria cashiers and managers, encouraging the kids. We use signage, like when we did when we can have local produce, we always name the farm. That, you know, these are Boggers peaches, or these are Deep Run Farm peppers, or White's potatoes. We try to do that kind of signage to encourage that. But, you know, it's always, you know, nutrition education and behavioral modification are always a challenge to move forward. So, but we try to model it with the very basics of our meal pattern, and that's what the tray consists of. I'll always say that the best thing we can do for children's diets is as simple as, like, my plate. Fill half your plate with fruits and vegetables. And that's exactly how that lunch meal pattern is derived, that we want half that tray with those fruits and vegetables, and it's the single best way to improve children's diet.
Our cafeteria assistants also encourage our students to eat the food that they've selected on their tray. Sometimes our students get so excited and social during the cafeteria time that they forget to eat, you know, what's on their tray. And so that's part of what our cafeteria assistants do.
And have we reduced I mean, I know everybody talks about, you know, you want a lot of choice, right? But have we reduced the unhealthy choices? Because I think a lot of the kids their natural tendency would be to go towards the unhealthy options, the packaged, the processed foods and everything, rather than the fresh fruits and vegetables. And I know I saw anecdotally, I saw at my kids' schools, there were a lot of kids who wouldn't eat the food that they took, and they were just waiting for the announcement to go for snacks so they could get their ice cream. And so ice cream was all that they had that day, right? So, I mean, how do you cut down on those kinds so are we reducing the amount of unhealthy choices that we're putting out there?
Well, I think the first thing is that to constitute a lunch or constitute a snack, and I have some slides that go through this, we have to meet certain requirements. So any entree that we serve has to meet the requirements for a lunch. So when we use the word healthy or unhealthy, I like to use the term nutritionally dense, because we probably can have 10 to 12 different definitions of healthy. So when we're doing nutrient analysis, we're looking for nutrient density. We're looking that our meals or our snacks meet certain requirements. And we analyze those to meet those and meet the nutrient needs of that age group child. Whether something's processed or it's homemade doesn't necessarily speak to nutritional content. You can make a homemade product that doesn't have huge amounts of nutritional density. I mean, I'm a baker and I love to bake. Not everything would be called nutritionally dense. So I'd like to make that kind of differentiation of defining healthy and in using the term nutritional density. So when selecting any one of these entrees, they have to fall within nutrient requirements for, I forget how many nutrient areas. I think it's like multiple nutrients, and I have a slide in here, but all that has to occur. So, you know, my argument would be, and 24, thanks, Chris. How good he is.
Looking ahead.
Looking ahead. So, you know, to be served in our program, it's already crossed a hurdle. So what we want to do is make available that students can pick and select what they want, and we want kids participating in school meals program. When I go, I look at my competition. My competition is what's packed out there on the lunch floor. And just as you're looking at waste and consumption within the school meals program, students also have waste and consumption within what they might pack. So when I look at what we offer and the choices and variety and how it bundles together, I feel like we're offering a really great nutritionally dense option. You know, I think the question is, does your diet meet your needs? Does it meet your micronutrient and your caloric needs? And then other foods can fit within moderation and balance. And that's kind of the way I look at what we put out there can all fit in moderation and balance if selected.
Right, and I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I think it all makes sense. I guess a couple of things that I've witnessed is, you know, with breakfasts. I think lunches are maybe a little bit different animal than the breakfasts. And I saw on multiple occasions the breakfasts at the schools where, because the majority of the choices were donuts and packaged foods and chocolate milk, that's what kids were choosing, right? And if they have that as a breakfast, they're basically getting sugared up.
Right.
They get the sugar high and the sugar crash. They're not, and we've been talking about that at like the Performance Academy that was held a couple of weeks ago, right? Saying things like, okay, we don't know that it's necessarily a cognitive issue at this point. You know, are these kids available to learn, right? And I would argue that they probably aren't as available to learn as they need to be if they're having a sugar up breakfast and having the high and the decline. So, and that's really why I just want to make sure that we're having the conversations from that perspective of, you know, are we giving the kids, so we're giving them those choices as a breakfast, and so that's what they're tending to choose. You know, does it make sense to maybe have some healthier choices? Okay. Or a reduction of the unhealthy choices at breakfast, because these tend to be the free and reduced meal kids who are having the breakfasts, right? So they're already at a disadvantage, and having the sugar high and sugar low is going to exacerbate that through the day.
So I was going to ask that too, because a lot of the ingredients I've noticed, the extra sugar in the chocolate milk, like it's not even a real chocolate, it's more like a sugar base. Food dyes, there's been studies that show that food dyes are linking to behavioral issues. So I do notice that, like, the strawberry milk has food dye in it, the Doritos has food dye in it. So those are choices that kids are making. And to me, it's kind of like we're kind of contradicting ourselves, like we're teaching our kids in health class that artificial flavors, fake sugars, food dyes, those type of things are not as good of a healthy choice for you. But then we're turning around and offering them in our schools, and I think it's kind of like we're like looking at ourselves going, well, that doesn't make sense. We're telling the kids not to do this, but yet we have as an option. So how do we even try to get those things removed from our schools? How do we get the food dye drinks away from them? I mean, I think that's another thing that we could possibly look at. I mean, even today when I had lunch with Bella, first thing I noticed on her chocolate milk is it's a sugar base.
And none of this is meant to be,
No.
This is not meant to be an attack on,
No.
on food services in the slightest, because you've done a phenomenal job, as we saw earlier in the presentation. This is just basically, talking about continuous improvement and maybe moving on to a wellness program, right, as we're discussing the things that aren't and the impact that it can have on student achievement. Sort of that next step in continuous improvement, and what are some things that we can do in that respect?
Just like you guys have said too, that sometimes this is probably the only meal a child is always going to receive during the day is their breakfast, lunch, and the dinners that are open at some of the schools. So this is potentially the only nutritional factor that they're getting outside of the home. And I would just like to see us try to better that a little bit. I mean, sometimes if you have something available at school and it's not available at the house, sometimes if they go grocery shopping with their parents, they're like, oh, look, we got that at school and I really like it. The parent might change the product and it might be a healthier choice offered in their home.
But we've also got to combat a lot of, I'm sorry, you were going to...
No, that's all right. Go
I
ahead.
think we have to combat a lot of things that are going on in the U.S. in general, right? I mean, childhood obesity is on the rise, and diabetes and everything else is because of these poor eating habits that are coming from the family. I mean, we're getting those kids into the school system, and they haven't learned the correct eating habits at home. And so we have to combat that as well. So I know it's a difficult puzzle to try to work through.
Is breakfast and after-school snacks available to all students?
No, breakfast is available at Tawnytown Elementary, Robert Moten Elementary, and now Elmer Wolf and Gateway Crossroads. There is universal breakfast. That is a state-funded program called the Maryland Meals for Achievement. In that case, every child, regardless if they're eligible for paid free or reduced meals, can receive or can elect to get a breakfast. All the other locations, breakfast is elective for every student. And eligibility is based on, it's free if you're eligible for free meals. It's this year 20 cents if you're eligible for reduced, and full paying is $1.50 in elementary and $1.75 in secondary. We are trying to always grow breakfast and lunch. In Carroll County, I think our financial stability really lies in capturing all students in participation. I do think the products that we offer are a healthy version of what you'll find in the vast majority of pantries across the county. And I think that the products and snacks we provide are actually designed for school systems and are a more nutrient-dense version of what you'll buy commercially, a lot of which you can't even buy commercially. So what we're trying to do is not make something so foreign that it isn't something that our customers will see and want to participate. because I do believe that them participating, they're getting a balanced meal, they're getting moderation in terms of how the federal government decides what we can serve. That's based on the research that they look at, and we can get into that in a couple slides if there's time.
And I was also going to comment that it's certainly, good that the breakfast program is open to all students. I know, having been in an early school at one point, the parents said it was just as easy. Their kids weren't really ready for breakfast as soon as they would get up because it would be super early, but they would send the child to school or the children to school with their breakfast money, and they would enjoy having breakfast in the cafeteria as well, because again, by the time they then took the bus ride and made it to school, by then they were ready for breakfast.
I think absolutely with the with more dual working households, that dynamic, and we've found our growth area in breakfast has been actually in the paid category, and we're having more families electing that you would feel have more choice. So.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the discussion about the breakfast, because I know that what I saw in my kids' elementary school was that most kids were getting donuts and chocolate milk and things like that, and you could argue that that's not a very good meal to be, because it's not that those were the only choices that were available to them, but that's what they were picking of the choices that were available. So I would argue that that's not a great start to the day for a lot of the kids. But so that's why I was basically trying to steer it in terms of how do we get the kids to pick the healthier items that we're clearly making available to them.
So, and we do have centralized the school breakfast menu. And so in our traditional schools, we try to make a hot, savory breakfast and what would be more grain-based breakfast also available. In terms of, let's say, the donut day or the donut, we would rotate that in once a week as one of 10 to 15 entrees. But your point being that on that day it is a popular item. Is it your typical donut? It's a whole grain donut. It has to meet a certain caloric content, and it's one that is available. It's appropriate portioning. So that's also a piece of it, whereas getting donuts at home, you think of, I got a dozen and we each have 3, or that kind of dynamic. So we are also working with the appropriate portion for the student. We have, like I said, at breakfast, we have traditional breakfast, we have classroom breakfast depicted in the second picture. We're trying some creative things at the high school level. We did a smoothie taste test in the high schools, and we now offer a grab-and-go smoothie as a breakfast entree at the high school level, at least a couple times a week in every location. They've been a bit of a hit, and that's been a positive. And that smoothie bundled, if they want with like a whole grain cracker, can be a breakfast in and of itself. It's made of fruit and milk and yogurt. And then we try to grow breakfast, and that's William Winchester receiving an award from one of our community partners, No Kid Hungry.
Oh, wait, could we get a little, so we grow breakfast? What exactly is that?
We're trying to get more children to participate.
Okay.
And that's, trying to get more children to come have breakfast with us. The one really strong statistic is that children that eat no breakfast perform the least well in the school day. So we do, like I said, that's always was a push. I think it was about 4 years ago we made sure that it was available at every location and not just select or the high free and reduced schools. Beyond the school breakfast, school lunch program, I mentioned after school program and supper program. Summer meals has really grown. We almost doubled the number of summer meals we served this year, and we serviced 14 locations. Some were just a couple days, some were the entirety of the summer. One of our neat partnerships was with the Taneytown Library, where we served summer meals from the first day, first Monday school was closed through the Friday before Labor Day. So we served meals to them the whole time. And so with our summer initiative, I don't know if you remember in the spring, you approved the purchase of a van. And so we are now trying to take those meals to the kids in the summer. Next time, hopefully when you see this van, it'll look a little dressier. We got a grant to make it more appealing, so parents will be comfortable sending their kids up to it to get a meal in the summer. We trialed it, got it in time to do 2 weeks at Carroll Park and Bishop Garth Park, where we actually delivered summer meals to students. So we're kind of excited about that.
So what do you do? Just set a time when you're going to be at those
Yeah.
sites so
Yes,
parents want to...
we advertise a specific time, and any child that shows up receives a meal. We're working with a Career and Tech Center student who's a graphic designer to help us with our wrap on the van.
And how often in the summer do we do that?
We just started, the summers are the first that we've done it. The van didn't come in until the end of July, so we did 2 weeks before school started, stopping at those parks, and we're hoping to expand that. We also do a little bit of catering. That's a very small part. Boy, I know I'm going long, so I'll farm to school. We try to purchase local produce when we can, when it's in season. Unfortunately, our school year doesn't align perfectly with the growing season. So we still have some out there now, but generally September, October, and then we try to buy again in the spring with, if nature allows, we can do some greens and some different broccoli in the spring. We also try to involve the students in the activities that we do. They are,
And I'm sorry, could I, and Dr. Lockard, you had talked about in a prior school system that you had been in about farm-to-table initiatives. Is that the same sort of idea?
Yes.
Or is that something different?
Yes, similar. I know that some of that is dependent on the season and the availability, but yeah, similar, you know, at a greater, I guess, different system, greater volume, but very similar to what Karen has described here.
So do we have solid partnerships with a lot of the local farms?
A lot of our challenge is volume, the volume that I need in terms of, you know, the minimum buy I generally get of anything is like 40 half bushels or you know, 3 bins of watermelon. So I have a strong partnership with, we regularly buy from Boggers, from Deep Run Farms, and from Wykes Family Farms. We also have a little setup with even the food stand, with the Wykes stand, where individual managers can pick up micro purchases. But and we continue, and any time we will say, you know, other farmers, please reach out to us, or if I get leads on farmers. But the challenge has generally been the volume of what we want to buy.
Do we have a contract, or do you have a contract, I should say, with a particular service company, whether it be like Performance Food Group, or anything of that nature? Like, who do we typically use?
Okay, so for different products, we utilize different vendors. We have our major distributor is Dory Foods at this time, and that bid goes out through a purchasing cooperative that we help with for 8 counties to try to get optimal bid or pricing. That is like our main grocery distributor. Then we have bids that go out for produce. We have bids that go out for milk. We have bids that go out for paper and cleaning supplies. We have bids that go out for packaged snack, milk, dairy. So each of these are part of our bid cycle and come to the board for approval.
Are any of them local right now? Like within Carroll County?
The only distributor is Carroll County Foods that we've had in the past. They didn't win the bid the last time. No other food vendors, we really don't have any of that size that even bid with us on the other areas. I mean, our milk comes from Frederick County, so you know, that's about as local as we can get from distribution there. So when we're doing the local buys, I'm doing a quote out to at least the 3 farms I have and getting best price and availability. And I just mentioned, I had mentioned earlier, our school food service professionals, our cafeteria staff and managers have really rolled with the changes and the different things that we've done. They're unique that their negotiating group, the Carroll County School Food Service Association, is also their professional organization. So they're really wedded to continual professional development. We have over half of our food service employees electively get certified in as a school nutrition employee or manager. There's some examples of just one putting up a bulletin board for the staff at the school.
Do you have a large turnover?
We do have some turnover, but it's been manageable. I would say, I guess by industry food service standards, it's very low. We would do, I'd say, roughly 8% turnover, 10%. That's not much in the world of food service.
Do you transfer managers?
Occasionally. We've had transfers of managers when we've gone to multi-unit managers, and this was part of our looking at labor and labor savings, where we've said we have a really small elementary school. Can we have a manager be able to manage 2 locations with their expertise and have employees under them? And so in those scenarios, there have been some manager transfers.
So you basically have a manager, a cook, and what, some hourlies?
We have a manager and employees at locations. We don't have a scaled cook, or you're either an employee or a manager.
Okay.
Talking about how we tie into the greater school wellness, I wanted to mention that we are part of the food services, and food service operations are part of the School Health Council and part of that membership. We are within the comprehensive school health and wellness policies and regulations. Those regulations are actually up for review this year. Our school system embraces the whole child, whole community model, which has 10 pieces within it, going from physical education and mental health and counseling services, an array of different things. You'll find food services within the one of 10 areas called the Nutritional Environment and Services section of the regulation. Services is what I'm sharing with you today, the school food services, the school cafeteria. Environment encompasses the greater school beyond the cafeteria. Can be in terms of food at school parties, things like that, or food as being a reward or a punishment, or any other areas that you would think, vending machines that are beyond our spectrum or scope. So that's under environmental. Then we have health education section of the wellness policy, is where you will include nutrition education. So just to kind of give you a feel, like where is nutrition in the wellness policy, I just kind of wanted to give you an overview. If you want to go to the next slide. Chris is here in case you had any questions about where in that health education and nutrition curriculum falls.
And I did see in the curriculum guides that we're approving tonight, there's specific healthy eating sections of the health programs, both at the elementary and the middle school level. So definitely see that tie there.
Did you have any questions? I know that Karen mentioned My Plate, and My Plate is very significant in our elementary school grades, trying to teach the students that half your plate should be fruit and vegetables. So they're seeing that in the cafeteria.
Okay.
They're hearing that in their health education classroom, too.
Can you use one of the mics for this thing?
Okay, I'm not loud enough. I'm sorry.
But do you want to have a seat? There's a...
Sure. We also have other things too, which aren't necessarily nutrition, but more manners and mindfulness, and you'll see that those were some of the additions that we did also, using manners while eating, or practicing mindful eating, which is really trying to teach students to enjoy that food and to experience it in different ways, to smell it, to taste it, and not try to rush through a meal. And we found that that is very important for students as they're trying to develop healthy eating habits. And then working with healthy breakfast, or in 4th and 5th grade, we really start moving into the nutrients, as Karen had mentioned, nutrient-dense food, and trying to incorporate some of that vocabulary in with the students, as well as dietary guidelines. Why do we need to eat these foods? What do these foods do for our body? What exactly are nutrients? And we do that in a fun way, such as nutrient superheroes. And so the students get to design their own superhero based on the different nutrients that are in foods. Middle school is a little bit different for us because middle school we have a lot of other topics in such a short period of time, and you also have facts. So students get a lot of their nutrition information in the facts class versus the health education class. And then in high school we come back with Health 1 with basics of nutrition, things to try to incorporate the food labels. Then you see the Supersize Me, that's really talking about the fast food and food options. And then throughout the different grade levels, we've really talked about beverages. What is it that you're drinking? And trying to get an importance of, it is important what you drink. And then you can see lessons added in water also, the importance of a water in a healthy diet. So we did have some significant changes that happened in our health education, and it's really trying to establish those healthy eating patterns in students.
And I think that's a really good start, right, like to have it embedded in the curriculum. But I think there's definitely a difference between theory and practice, right? Like, so you had touched on this earlier, Ms. Battaglia, where is there a way to tie those two? It's like, okay, this is what we're teaching in the health curriculum.
But this is what we're
But
serving.
this is not necessarily what we're serving, but what kids are picking, right, like in practice. So I think we're serving some of the right things. I don't think the kids are necessarily picking it. So how do we tie the theory and the practice together of, okay, we're teaching
Well, I
the
think
healthy eating habits?
Exposure in the classroom as well as exposure in the food line for students to see what those healthy options are and to have them out in front of them so they can try them. A lot of times students are a little bit more afraid to try different foods. You can see in one of our grade levels we talk about goal setting. So the students try to pick one healthy goal and try to figure out what is my plan to reach that healthy goal with my eating. So maybe that would be to try to add more fruits to my diet or to add more vegetables into my diet. Right. So trying in little ways, but a lot of that once again comes through home education too. What are the kids seeing at home? And you know, how can we incorporate those healthy choices at school that they're seeing in the school lunch line or in the people sitting next to them?
And again, I think the exposure and the education, as you are saying, are so important. I can remember, can't remember which grade it was or anything, but I can remember going in a health class at one point, and the kids were just so amazed at what had happened. I guess there was a video that had shown what happens to a hamburger once it sits out or decomposes or whatever. So again, it is, you know, the education that we give the kids in the health classes and in our schools. I think that's really going to be helpful. But you're right. I mean, that's just part of what we need to do.
And another neat tie-in that you wouldn't see from the paper or the display is the farm-to-table lessons that we really worked with the Maryland Extension for. And Maryland Extension came through, and they are at 3 of our schools, as Karen had mentioned, but they came through and worked with some teachers so we could get those farm-to-table lessons. And we have quite a few of those, so the students can know, where does my food come from? Where does it come through? And why do some foods taste different on my tongue than other foods? So those were lessons that were incorporated through the Maryland Extension and some of the materials that they supplied to us. So a little shout out to them.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I think that it makes so much sense, and education and awareness is certainly the first and most important step, but I think maybe we need to start thinking about how do we make closer ties to the actual practice of what they're picking at the school breakfasts and the school lunches, right? So they're learning about it, and I think it probably makes sense to them, but then as they're going through the line, they're not necessarily practicing what we're preaching, right? So if they have those healthy food goals, you know, is there a way to have some additional ties to the health class or something to say, okay, well, this is your goal in your health class, and how do we track that and help them make those choices through the lunch line? Or, maybe just take it one step further to make that tie to actual practice.
I agree, because I mean, a lot of times, like, we talk to students about fake sugars, artificial sweeteners, and preservatives, and fake cheeses. I mean, those things we're constantly telling the kids, like, you know, these things you want to look at. You don't want to eat that type of stuff because this is what it could do to your stomach or your intestines, you know. And then at the same time, then we have Doritos sitting right in the shelf. And yeah, I will struggle with that. Like, my kids, no, we don't have Doritos in my house because it has food dye. Like, in my house, we do not have food dye. And, you know, I mean, it's hard when they're at school and you have no control over that. I mean, perfect
Right, but
example.
one of the things that we do emphasize with kids too is the moderation, as Karen had mentioned too. You know, within your diet, it's okay sometimes to have that little cheat food or to have something in moderation. As long as I'm trying to practice healthy habits most of the time, you know, it's okay. It's not a completely taboo thing. And that moderation, I think, is important. And that is something that is very difficult to develop in kids too, because they are impulsive by nature.
And since you're all talking about like farm to table, Elmer Wolf is having dinner next, it's on my calendar, so everybody didn't think I was on my phone, on the 24th, that evening, so at 5:30, and it's $10, but it is farm to table, and I wanted to give that a plug, that we are practicing what we're preaching.
That's on the 24th?
Elmer Wolf, at 5:30.
I think that just went out, didn't it?
Yes, it
Karen?
did, yes, we all got an invitation.
Okay.
So, yes. So that's one way, some more to advertise.
Right, and I guess this is just like a broader look at, you know, wellness activities, right? I mean, because as a step for continuous improvement consistent with our strategic plan, right? Like one of the things that we had done 2 years ago was the educational, the elementary behavioral task force, right? And that task force kind of focused on behavioral issues and things that we had data-driven things that we could analyze and try to come up with solutions. But I think maybe this is sort of a first step toward a broader look at wellness, right? Like, so the root causes that we try to identify as part of that task force centered around the things that we had behavioral data on, right? But if you kind of take a broader look at wellness, you know, if we start looking at, you know, social interaction, which we looked a little bit through the BYOD policy. You start look at more movement with additional recess time. You look at play initiatives, you know, and developmentally appropriate activities at the younger ages. And then this just eating healthier, you know, just sort of a broader wellness look. In keeping with the things that we were talking about at the Performance Academy a couple of weeks ago, right, where we said it's not necessarily cognitive at this point, right? Like, we've got solid curriculum. The kids are, they're good kids. They're smart kids, you know, but are we giving them their best leg up? Are we giving them the ability to be ready to learn, right, in the best way possible? And so I think this discussion is just, you know, another step in let's look at the broader holistic issue.
Board members, given the amount of discussion, we're rapidly running out of the time that we scheduled, so we kind of just whispered to Karen, at your pleasure, she could either jump to the questions you pre-submitted, although some of those you may be asking and getting answers to anyway, or she could continue with the background information, which may address your questions, but we probably can't do both in the remaining less than 20 minutes. Do you have a preference on skipping to the questions you sent in or continuing in the sequence of providing the background information on the regulations that she has to operate under and that sort of thing?
Board members, do you have a preference?
Well, I would suggest, since they have prepared the information to share with us, can we go through that, and hopefully the questions will be answered as we go through those.
And I'll try to be expedient.
We'll try to let you go ahead and do what you have to do.
So this slide kind of talks about, you know, you're talking about how do you select items, or how do we decide what we're going to have in our meals program. We have a whole slew of regulations that we already layer that we have to meet. And we also have, can you go back real quick, we have funding and how we're funded and how much we can spend on the meal. and our attempts to stay in line with our financial goals. And the last is customer preference. Customer preference is huge in Carroll County because we're a school system that has a lot of choice. We have 20%, roughly 19 to 20% of our kids are eligible for free and reduced meals. The remainder are full paying, and they definitely make a decision every day whether to pack or buy. And I like to look at exactly what I'm competing against in terms of packing, and I'm pretty comfortable with what we offer nutritionally in that arena. So, National School Lunch, School Breakfast standards. We have to meet meal patterns, I alluded to. These meal patterns are consistent with the dietary guidelines for Americans and the My Plate that Chris mentioned, which is the pattern of what we use to say what should consist of most of your diet. The amounts of foods included in the meal pattern, we have to put through that nutrient analysis, and they're determined and assessed that we're meeting 24 nutrient target needs that a child would need. So what they need to be able to function with their micro and macronutrients. Where do our regulations come from? They come from the nutrition standards, and they evolve as researchers learn more about health and nutrition. Dietary guidelines for Americans. They are determined by Health and Human Services and USDA. They bring together the best minds in health and nutrition, and they vet the research, and they are looking for reliability, validity, and repeated proof of those items. And that's how this all kind of trickles down, and how we kind of get, you can serve this item if, and I'll get into the if. So our breakfast and lunch meal patterns, we have to serve, and we exceed it, fruits and vegetables, offerings. Everything we serve has to be whole grain rich. So if you're looking at the sandwich that we offer, that's on a whole grain roll. We don't get an option. Our pizza is a whole grain crust. The calories have to meet a minimum and a maximum for a breakfast and a lunch. That's how it's addressing obesity and looking for the average needs of a child's caloric needs. Sodium limits have been tiered in to try to get the palate away from that need for salt that probably most of us grew up on. We can have no trans fats, and we have a limitation on the saturated fat in any meal. Our milk be 1% and be non-fat, flavored, and a variety has to be offered. Talking about the flavored milk, a lot of the research there speaks to milk consumption is important, and when you remove offering flavored milk, milk consumption goes down, and also the food waste associated with the milk served becomes greater. So they believe, and they give this guidance because they want children consuming milk and getting the calcium they need for their bones. Access to water, which is also in the nutrition education materials, has become a requirement. And our menus and all our foods are analyzed when we go through a state administrative review, and all products are assessed to see if we meet those regulations. Go ahead, Tim. So the snacks we serve that we mentioned, and like I said, we make available to our parents so that they're aware of what products are available, but our snacks are a little different than what you'll buy commercially. A snack must be whole grain rich, or have the first ingredient be fruit, vegetable, or dairy, or a protein product, or it can be a combination of at least a quarter cup of fruit or vegetable and one of those other items. Then it also has to meet a calorie minimum, a sodium minimum, and a
Maximum.
maximum. It has to meet the calorie, sodium and fat and sugar requirements. We have to put every snack we put into a determining smart snack calculator, And for us, industry has developed a whole line of smart snacks that you can't even necessarily find on the commercial market. So if we were to open up a bag of our Doritos, you'll see that it's a reduced fat, it's a different type of chip, and it's a smaller portion. So again, kind of getting into that moderation and appropriate portioning. Go ahead. So the whole basis of the regs that we're given is to make sure that anything we serve is nutritionally dense, that the main ingredient is something of good nutritional value for a child to consume, and that it's appropriately portioned. And one of the things we try to look at is that it's similar to the foods that you're finding in a typical home pantry or served at home, and that we believe that all foods can fit in moderation and balance. And then our big push, like with our technology, is that transparency in the products that are served so that parents can make those decisions with their kids in terms of what they would like to purchase.
I guess potentially the one exception to that, though, is on the milk, right? I mean, if we're required to offer a variety of milk, and if you look at the ingredients in the chocolate and the strawberry milk, and those aren't...
It's not what you find at home.
It's not what you find at home, and it's very high calorie and lots of chemicals.
Yeah.
And
It's very difficult to find fat-free flavored milk on the commercial market. And that's, dairies have had to produce these products specifically for schools. So that's one of our challenges, is finding the fat-free milk.
right.
So the next piece is kind of funding, and how is the school food service funded? Here in Carroll County, this graph looks a lot different than it would if we were maybe in other locations and locales. We get about 46% of our funding from the government reimbursement for every breakfast or lunch that we serve that meets those requirements. We get 53% of our funding from the parents, from cash or deposits made for full paying meals and for snacks. And then a little bit of other for 1% from catering or sale of equipment or other grants that we may receive. So we really are, need to provide a product that our students will want to purchase and participate. We're always looking, like I said, to try to grow those breakfast and lunch numbers. Right now, we have at lunch maybe 25 to 30% of students will participate in lunch. So the vast majority are packing lunch, and at breakfast we're somewhere around 12 to 13%.
Is that right? So we only have 25% participation for lunch?
25 to 30, depending on the menu mix.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a lot lower than I would have expected.
So we really think we want to get kids to eat what we're offering, because it is, good balanced meals, as you see in the nutritional analysis, and we want to make that available and at affordable price for all our households.
I remember one thing my daughter always said when she was in elementary school and now in high school was the biggest days that the kids bought was when breakfast was for lunch, when they had French toast sticks or pancakes for lunch.
It's a hit.
Yeah.
It
That's when
definitely
it's
is.
like the big time.
Used to be pizza day back in the day.
Pizza Day is still strong.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What about the adults? Do you have many adults going to the cafeterias for
We
meals?
have some adult participation, and we've been trying to encourage that. New teachers get a little coupon from us for a breakfast or lunch to come down to the cafeteria, and we encourage the managers to send emails out. I think, some of the time with the duty-free lunch, a lot of teachers will stay in their rooms, and it's trying to get them down into that cafeteria.
Well, I know a lot of times when the managers could provide like salads and, items like that, the teachers really seem to go
Well, we have an
for
entree.
those.
We have an entree salad available every day in every cafeteria in the county, unless we have some kind of produce emergency or something not. But generally, and we put out so that you could see, there is a chicken Caesar salad that you can find, or various other entree salads.
Do you get a large participation on your Thanksgiving and Easter meals?
A lot of adult participation, yes. It's kind of a moderate day for the students. And we made a bold move about 3 years ago and only put the turkey dinner on, and student sales crashed. So
Wow.
we added in a chicken sandwich as an option, and we're getting them
Just
back up. So,
No?
That hasn't changed. The kids didn't like those.
The percent that pack really surprised me. Are snacks available to students that pack?
oh, absolutely. The snacks are there. They're there to supplement whether you purchase or you pack a lunch. And we do occasionally put some of the snacks on the lunch, again with that theory that everything can fit in moderation. So like, and I did put out, like there's our whole grain cookie is popular, and we'll cycle that on, because I also want kids that may not have the money to buy a la carte to have those as part of their lunch and available to them, that they also get those.
And so does that participation rate, so the 25 to 30%, does that vary dramatically by elementary, middle, and high?
It generally declines, I would say, in the high school when I look at those percentages, as kids become more mobile, have some other options. We have kids, a lot of kids that drive to high school. I would say our participation kind of does decline. Those kids also having their own money may choose to buy just a singular entree instead of the whole entire meal. One of the healthy eating techniques we do is we try to nudge them to the meal and say, you know, that sandwich is $2.25 and that's part of our pricing structure. You can get the whole meal for $3 and you can get all these other items. So we'll have cashiers actually trying to encourage those high school kids to adopt the entire meal. So when it comes down to, and this is an average number, we get about $3.77 to try to produce the entirety of our meal. This is one we offered in the spring of an entree salad at West Middle. That's a spinach, feta cheese, chicken salad. With that, we have to pay for all food and supplies, materials purchased, all labor, benefits, repair of equipment, new equipment, the food service office, and then also our specialized hardware, software, and then also we provide a service, of course, of providing special diets to any child with a doctor's note or with a dietary disability with that funding.
Oh, and just wanted to let you know, my son wanted to know what happened to those spinach and strawberry salads, because those were his favorite, and he said they were only, did we just pilot those last
He
year?
featured them in the spring, and then we'll reintroduce them again as strawberry prices kind of fluctuate. But
Okay.
we'll reintroduce those. Yes, they'll be-
Okay, because those specialty salads looked like they were actually a fairly big hit at the schools, and then they disappeared. So the kids were wondering, oh, what happened?
And we do give managers some flexibility, so we can look at the different schools and see that they're offering them.
Okay.
That's another consistency challenge that you pointed out. So these are some of the things we already talked about, that how do we stay within our budget, the competitive bidding, the cooperative purchasing, trying to standardize our products across, applying a labor formula to determine you get so much labor in your kitchen based on the number of sales that you have. That was a big kind of change. And then also trying to reinvest into our program so that the funds that we have, and once we get beyond break even, that we're purchasing things that'll make the future better.
And what about things like seasonings and stuff like that? Like the vegetables, I mean, they look appetizing, but if they don't have anything on them, right? I mean, I don't necessarily just mean salt, right? But if you just, are seasonings, because it's all about taste, right? Getting the kids to pick things. Is there a way to use seasonings to make those things more tasty, or is that just cost prohibitive?
We certainly can use particularly dried herbs. Fresh herbs, when we started to look into those and pilot some of that, was kind of cost prohibitive. Anytime we get approached by a school group wanting to grow something for us, we encourage herbs because it's something that we can get enough of a quantity for to really make a difference. But we do different dried, and we did offer flavor stations I think a couple years ago, in terms of that kids could put shaker flavor that weren't sodium-based on their food after they ate it. The challenge is serving the group. There are those that want the seasoning and some that don't want those green flecks on their vegetables to touch. So we did try with allowing them to add it on. And then I get back to trying to get more kids to participate. Really here in Carroll County, kids want choice and they have choice, of what they can elect to participate or purchase. We try to do product testing, sampling, surveying. We go out there and we seriously consider what the student is packing. And we made some more grab-and-go meals because of that. How can we make a more nutritional version if this is what they're going to pack that can maybe capture them to come over and eat with us? We have a menu committee that comprises central office staff, and we consider sales data for optimal participation. So I might love an entree, but if the data shows after running it 3 or 4 times, nutrition doesn't work unless I get it inside the kid, unless I get them to purchase a meal and consume a meal. I'm not achieving my goal. So there's sometimes that some of those things we go by the wayside, and then we'll try a different product to see if the students will like that. We see our future in technology going to digital marketing to the kids and giving them opportunities to maybe have an app and pre-order a meal, particularly in the high school level. That's kind of where we're looking ahead because kids want instant, they want knowledge that it's going to be there for them. And we know that our food has to look good. It has to be convenient, easy access for them, and we have to get them into a habit of buying because if we have a packing mentality, which we just traditionally have been, more packing from home versus buying school meals. We need to work to change that.
And I'm happy to see that you looked into about the surveying, because that was actually one of my questions about, is there a way we can survey the public again to see how students feel regarding the food choices that we offer in our schools. So I was glad to see that you had that in there, that you're already planning ahead to do another survey, so I thank you for that. And I thank you for everything that you do. It's not easy feeding almost 26,000 kids.
And we did say earlier how we're combating some of the bad habits that are forming at home, right? I mean, we're becoming a fast food society, and not necessarily preaching or practicing the healthy eating habits at home, and then the kids bring those habits to school. Did you actually see as we're making this transition to healthier choices, have we seen a decrease in participation?
We had confounding variables, which is always the challenge in operations. So at the same time that we were putting a healthy, hunger-free and the whole grains in, we did see a drop. And we got complaints from the kids. This isn't pizza-like. The crust doesn't taste the same to me. I don't like the brown bread. Now that we're kind of a generation on, we're seeing that there's more acceptance, because once they've had it through elementary school, it becomes more common. I think more households are using more whole grain products. But at the same time, we also had a price increase. Whenever we have a price increase, we have a decline sometimes in the paid meal category. So a lot of things were happening at once.
Right. Okay, so you think that it's kind of normalized at this point with all the change, with the price increase, with the changes to healthier choices. You saw a decrease, but now it's kind of normalized as to where, okay.
And I do think that our goal is we're trying to hold that paid lunch price if we can, as long as we can, because we know that makes it accessible, our program accessible to all families. So if we can keep that price point reasonable.
It's been the same for several years now, right?
It has, yes. I think it's about 4.
So I know we've run a little long here. We do have responses to a lot of the questions. I think some of them we may have addressed during the presentation. In terms of any next steps from this, it was a great informational opportunity and a good conversation amongst the board, as Ms. Savigny said, as we think about continuous improvement and try to tie in some of that health and well-being to student achievement. this was a great conversation to have. And Karen, thank you, and Tammy, for all that you do each and every day. Were there any other additional next steps? We did take some notes, some things to explore. Are there any other next steps from the board for us for consideration?
I think we did have a couple of follow-ups, right, where we were looking at, okay, how do we increase participation, right, in the breakfast and lunch programs, right? So there are some pieces with that. How do we tie practice of what the kids are actually choosing to some of our healthy eating elements of the health program? There was something else that you had suggested, Ms. Battaglia.
Just look into different options, removing things that, studies have found that contribute to a lot of behavioral issues. Just look at ways, seeing if we can find a different distributor for this type of products without that ingredient. I mean, I know they're out there. It's just a matter of just seeing what we can do.
Right. And then just more marketing efforts in terms of how do we get what are some marketing things that we can do in order to get the kids to make those healthier choices? We're making them available. Now how do we get them to...
And it is such an important part of a child's day. So again, I know we appreciate all that you all do to make it not just enjoyable for them, but you're certainly looking at the nutritional density, my new term for the day. So I appreciate that.
There's a lot of research out there that links nutrition to academic performance. So it's kind of the next step of things for us to look at. So we really appreciate you bringing this information for the open discussion.
And I've never eaten in one of the cafeterias and been disappointed. It's good. You guys do an awesome job. You do.
There was a former superintendent who, whenever he visited a school, the first place that he would go would be the school cafeteria. Even if he wouldn't get to any of the classrooms, he had to get to the cafeteria. So it is an important spot.
I am that one parent
You're saying that's changed.
I'm no longer there, so I don't know.
I'm that one parent who looks forward to the Thanksgiving and winter and spring holiday meal, so that's my go-to when I go see the kids. It's enjoyable, and I know a lot of parents will do that.
Thank you.
And I thank you for bringing the samples, because this can put a lot of the rumors and anecdotal things to rest. When you can actually see, okay, this is what it looks like.
I know you might have a little break. Help yourself to the tray of cookies. The rest is kind of a little more showy. But those cookies were fresh baked.
Right. Okay.
1 ounce whole grain within the requirements of Smart Snacks.
Right.
Thank you again,
All right.
Karen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I saw you at Valley last year.
Oh, yeah.